everybody. It's Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. Welcome to the NFL Fantasy Football Show presented by Uber Eats. Get game day deals all season long. It's me, your man, MG Marcus Grant, joined by Michael F. Florio and Laquan Jones. We're already planning our Thanksgiving menu. I'm starting to shake stuff. Do you have any bad food takes for Thanksgiving, Laquan? Because I'm sure there's one out there somewhere.
Macaroni cheese is overrated for Thanksgiving.
Yep, we're right. We're off and running.
Just for Thanksgiving or in general?
We're off and running.
For Thanksgiving, when people brung it over back in Jersey, I just kind of was like, all right, that's like the third mac and cheese like that was brought, for the Friendsgiving, so like it's overrated. You don't have to make macaroni cheese for Thanksgiving.
All right. Yep, we're off and running with bad food takes. Here we go. We got plenty to talk about on the show today. We'll review our Week 12 previews. We'll get you a lot of the big fantasy relevant games late. Also, have our fantasy hot takes, which hopefully won't be as bad as Laquan's macaroni and cheese take. But let's start with Thursday Night Football. Actually, let's start with the fact that there are 6 teams on a bye. Let's start right there because the Falcons, the Bills, the Jaguars, the Saints, and the Jets all have the week off. I guess the Jets get the week off to think about all the things they've done wrong and how they can make things better for themselves for the remainder of the season. Meanwhile, for the rest of those teams, a chance to sort of rest up a little bit and get ready for the stretch run. Now, we can move on to Thursday Night Football because we got the Steelers and the Browns. You can see that game at 8:15 p.m. Eastern on Prime Video. And we love Jameis on this show. Jameis is an endless source of entertainment. Whether you think he's going to succeed or fail, you can't help but watch him because he's always going to be entertaining. All that said, Florio, would you stream Jameis against the Steelers on Thursday night?
I would rather not. Because of a couple of reasons. One, it's a short week. 2, there's potentially bad weather in the forecast there, so you got to monitor that. But also, the Steelers' defense are really good, and they know their division opponents very well. Like, Mike Tomlin has been in that division longer than anyone, and we saw last week they shut down Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. So I understand you might have to because of 6 teams on bye, but Tua Tagovailoa, Drake May, even Danny DeVito, Tommy DeVito, some quarterbacks that I would rather stream this week.
I'm like, we're down bad if we're streaming Danny DeVito this week. I would say this, the thing that works in Jameis' favor potentially is being a volume shooter. He has averaged 44 passing attempts per game. In fact, he's thrown the ball 46 times in back-to-back contests. So just maybe volume wins out alone. But
the Jordan Poole of the NFL.
He is the Jordan Poole of the NFL. I was going to give him James Harden, but I think Jordan Poole is probably a little more accurate because Jordan Poole is way more entertaining than James Harden for sure. All right, so there you go. That's the Thursday night football game. Let's turn our attention to the Sunday games, and we will start with the Lions at the Colts. Laquan, the Lions can't stop scoring touchdowns. It is what they seem to love to do. Meanwhile, on the Colts side, Anthony Richardson showed up in a big way last week. Do we trust Anthony Richardson for a second straight week? And I say that knowing that you might have an interesting take about Anthony Richardson later on in the show.
Oh, yeah, later on the show, but let's backtrack to last week because he was my Snorlax. He was my sleeper who showed up and showed out, and I think he could do that this week as well. I mean, this will be a true test if things are starting to work out for him. I mean, Marcus, you had a fire stat earlier this week on the pod. 30% of his runs were designed, and they're playing to his strengths, and he was great in the pocket as well, completing 75% of his downfield passes, and like we're seeing Anthony Richardson the way we saw him in the offseason where we're looking at his ceiling to where I think he can bust through the ceiling if they keep playing to his strengths. Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, they feel like good plays this week regardless of the matchup.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Dwayne McFarland and the folks over at Fantasy Life for the designed runs stat. They do a great job of tracking that sort of thing over there. That's what we want out of him. We want him to run the football. We want him to give us those rushing touchdowns. It's what he wasn't doing earlier in the season. We already knew that he was a work in progress as a passer. So when we weren't getting the rushing yards and the passing thing was falling apart, it was bad times. But now if he's going to run the ball more, we can start to buy in a little bit more. 49ers at the Packers. We have been waiting for Christian McCaffrey to come back. He's been back for 2 games, and to be honest with you, it's been kind of meh for him so far. The Niners need a win to keep pace in the NFC West. The Packers, a very good team. Is this finally the week, Florio, that CMC does what CMC does?
I think so, but I do want to point, we are so spoiled with Christian McCaffrey because he has topped 100 scrimmage yards and around 15 fantasy points in each game, and we're like, come on, do something. Where for a lot of other players, we're like, that is a fantastic week. But yeah, it's just a matter of time, right? Like, you missed the first 10 weeks of the season. I wouldn't, with an injury especially, like, don't really expect him to come out and look like prime CMC right off the bat. But one of these days, he is really going to get going. And it could be this week because the Packers secondary has been playing really, really well as of late. They've done a really good job of taking away wide receivers. And we know that this guy's basically a wide receiver out of the backfield. So if you can limit those other guys, expect a lot of balls to go his way. Like, he is a must-start option. When the floor is 15 fantasy points, we're talking about a guy that you start each and every week.
Yeah, I mean, that is wild that you say that, right? Because I'm looking at it, and over the last 2 weeks, he is the running back 10, which, again, you didn't necessarily draft him to be the running back 10, but as you mentioned, the fact that he missed the first 10 weeks of the season and he comes back and is still giving you 15 fantasy points, you got to feel kind of okay about this. On the other side of things, Laquan, I mean, with the Packers, earlier in the week, Florio said he is giving up on Dontavian Wicks, right? That he is kind of washing his hands of this. How are we feeling about the wide receivers there? I mean, have we decided, is it just 3 guys? Is there room for a 4th guy?
No, there is not. I mean, is there even room for 3 guys? I mean, we're constantly up and down each week trying to figure out which Packers wide receiver we can trust. I mean, Christian Watson had his, I would say, version of the Randy Moss game last week. I mean, he showed up and showed out, which is great on a lot of people benches or even on the wire. But it's like one of those headaches that we constantly know that we had to expect going into the season. Like, we had to have our expectations. Like, it might be Romeo Doubs week. It might be Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed found the end zone, but not much production. But these are the things that are on the table when it comes to these Packers wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know that we talked before the season about who's the wide receiver 1. We kind of assumed it was Jaden Reed. We were trying to figure out how the rest of them sort of stacked up. I guess we can figure out Wicks is sort of the odd man out. Romeo Doubs kind of flashes every once in a while, but it is Jaden Reed. It is Christian Watson, and that's kind of it. I do want to ask you guys, how are you feeling about Josh Jacobs at this point in the season, Flory? I mean, he hasn't been flashy, but he hasn't been terrible, I don't think.
Yeah, that's like, he is one of those players. He's kind of what you drafted him to be. Like, you weren't drafting him to be like Christian McCaffrey or Bijan Robinson or something like that. You were drafting to get good volume each and every week, and that's what he gives you. Like, what I like is he's getting a little bit more targets as of late, but a very high-end RB2, low-end RB1 that is going to give you very safe work each and every week.
I mean, he's 3rd in rushing yards right now.
It's crazy.
Behind Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, he just isn't finding the end zone.
No one would guess that he is 3rd if you asked.
Nobody. That's what I was about to say. Like, I was really surprised you said that. Like, oh wow, yeah. But like, he's a productive running back in that backfield, and it's one of those things where, you know, they found their running back that they can lean on, get involved in the passing game. Like, I'm happy with my Josh Jacobs shares. I took a shot at him in some leagues, but this is like a James Conner-ish type season where he's just been a guy but producing, you know.
It's funny you say that because him and Connor right now RB 15 and 16 on the season.
See, that's nuts. That's insane. I didn't even look that up. I swear.
It's absolutely nuts. I mean, but it's funny. The thing about it is we feel so much differently about James Conner than we do Josh Jacobs, right?
I love James Conner.
James Conner was like, I love James Conner. Josh Jacobs is like, what's wrong with you, man?
He set us up that one year where he was like, he's playing, but then he ended up not. Like, it was one of those Instagram things that he did.
You know the meme where it's like
it's the HR thing.
Yeah. Like that. Josh Jacobs is the second part of that meme.
He is. He's the like, oh, Josh Jacobs, like, freaking out about it. It's wild. Let's talk some sleepers. It's time for Is It In You? Fueled by Gatorade. About some guys who maybe aren't projected for huge numbers that we think can sort of outperform what the projections are. And Laquan, who is your, I guess, sleeper or under the, I don't even know how to describe it, but who do you have for this segment? Laquan.
Listen, Matthew Stafford, a lot of people fearing this Eagles defense. I am not feared for them. Matthew Stafford is getting his O-line near good health. Rob Havenstein trending in the right direction to play. With a healthy O-line, Sean McVay can open this playbook up. Not to mention Puka Nacua, Eric Puka, and Cooper Kupp going to be on that perimeter lighting up this Eagles defense, because this is the most complete team that the Eagles have faced in a very long time. Because you look at the Joe Burrow game, he didn't have T. Higgins. And who else did they play? The Cowboys with Cooper Rush. This is going to be an offense that they're going to have to fear with their running back with Kyron Williams. You're going to have to fear Cooper Kupp. You're going to have to fear Puka Nacua. And Matthew Stafford, he's in that tier of the Patrick Mahomes, the Joe Burrows, the Lamar Jacksons, where you don't have to fear about his talent because he's in that tier as a Hall of Famer who makes every single play look like it's special.
All right, so Matthew Stafford, John Matthew Stafford, if we're being formal.
John, yes. I like how you run the government out.
I mean, hey, look, man. Like,
wait. His first name is John.
His name's actually John Stafford. Yes.
I've watched him play football for like 15 years. I'm today years old learning that his name is John.
John Matthew Stafford
Wow.
is actually his full name. Yes, for real.
That's when he's having a good game.
so duped.
I'll call him John.
Yeah. I mean, so now I'm going to look up. Well, I think Drake May's first name is actually Drake, but either way, I know you're Drake Lee May is the full
Drake
name.
Lee May?
Yeah, that's it.
Puka's name is not actually
Kendrick May?
Puka. I can't pronounce it.
I don't know what his first name is. I got to look it up. But I do like Drake May. Drake May is like a litmus test right now. You could find out who has watched Drake May or who has just watched box scores by how excited they are about Drake May. Because with the way he's playing right now, he has fully captured my attention. I say it every week, like flashes of what early career Josh Allen looked like. Strong arm, can run, 20 or more rushing yards in 5 of 6 games, but we've seen him run for over 90 in a game. He's averaged 17 fantasy points in his 5 game, throwing the ball a bunch, has a strong arm, and I think this is a week. The Dolphins will score a bunch of points, which means the Patriots will be chasing points, have to throw plenty, and that tends to lead to fantasy success. He's kind of like what Blake Bortles was that year. Blake Bortles was good in fantasy, except for Drake May's actually good at football.
Yeah, Blake Bortles, man, that year was wild because Bortles would throw like 2 or 3 picks in the first half, and in the second half he'd come back and throw for like 250 and 3 tutties. Like, it was wild that season. By the way, the answer to your question, Laquan, it's Makia Puka Nacua.
Makia.
That's
Makia,
it.
yes.
That is it. I don't have a government name for the Commanders defense because it's just the Washington Commanders DST. That's who I think is going to have a good week this week because they get to play the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, sometimes fantasy is a simple game, right? You find a defense that's playing poorly or an offense that's playing poorly and you target them. And right now, the Dallas Cowboys are a bad offense. Cooper Rush did look better in week 11 than he did in week 10, but it still wasn't very good. The Cowboys cannot run the football. They can't really throw it beyond getting it to CeeDee Lamb unless somehow Kevontae Turpin somehow takes advantage of an inside leverage slant and takes it to the house. Last week, as Patrick Claybon has pointed out, I believe 8 times this week on NFL Fantasy Live, Cooper Rush threw the ball 55 times. That is no way for this Cowboys offense to live. If you look at their schedule, find who they are playing, find that defense and try to stream them against the Cowboys. This week, the lucky recipient is the Washington Commanders, who have been a lot better over the last month than they were in the first part of the season. I think they're going to continue to eat. They're going to do it at the expense of Cooper Rush and the Cowboys. So make sure that you are streaming the Washington Commanders defense this week. All right. Still got plenty more to talk about here on the show. We got some hot starts coming up for you, plus some more game previews, and we will finish some things out with some hot takes. Stick around for more of the NFL Fantasy Football Show presented by Uber Eats. Time for hot starts presented by Uber Eats. These are the guys we think are going to go really big this week. And Laquan, I love your hot start for this week.
Yes, Tyrone Tracy, man. Like, honestly, I think some people are scared at the back change, but when you're looking for a spark in this run game, I don't think this defense that the Bucs have are going to be stacking the box because they still have to worry about Malik Neighbors. They got to worry about Wan'Dale Robinson. Tyrone Tracy has been solid these last 5 games, man. And he's a top 22 or 25 running back this season, and he's averaging 15 fantasy points per game. The Bucs allow a lot of production in the passing game as well with the running back, so I'm looking at Tyrone Tracy to have a big week this week.
You mentioned the production in the passing game that the Bucs allow, especially to running backs. I think 4th most receiving yards to running backs this season. And the thing we saw from Tommy DeVito last year, he was a check down guy, was not pushing the ball downfield. It's why Wan'Dale Robinson ate. It's why I like Theo Johnson as a deep sleeper. And it's why I think Tyrone Tracy can have a pretty good game against Tampa this week. Florio, last year we wanted great things for JSN. We didn't get great things for JSN, but this year we're getting great things for JSN.
We're like, he is playing so much. Like, we all knew he could play, but I think the stats are even better than like what we had hoped for. Look at his last 2 games. Combined 24 targets, 17 catches, 290 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, I know he had a game in college where he somehow topped those numbers, but yeah, like that is wide receiver 1 type production, and it's not like it's just a 2-game blip. 9.3 targets per game in his last 7. He has surpassed Tyler Lockett as the go-to guy there. Him and DK can clearly coexist. And I don't think the Cardinals secondary is getting enough credit for how well they have played, which is why I think JSN in the slot this week could be even more scary, because if they're taken away out wide, that's going to be more volume across the middle for JSN. So great start this week. I think how can you not be starting him right now?
Yeah, I don't know how you could be starting him at all right now. I know I think NFL.com had him projected for 11.8 fantasy points, and that felt like shortchanging him with what he has done.
He's averaged 29 per game the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, just definitely shortchanging him. And as you mentioned, he has surpassed Tyler Lockett. He is the wide receiver 2 in Seattle. I think right now he leads the team in targets, but that is mostly because DK Metcalf missed a couple of games with an injury, but he's absolutely taken a big step forward this year for the Seahawks. My hot start this week is the guy who's been a hot start for about a month now, is Justin Herbert. You go back to week 7, he is the QB6 and doing it in a big way, averaging about 275 passing yards per game, 7 touchdown passes, just 1 interception for Herbert. Also occasionally getting out of the pocket and doing it with his legs, and this week has a great matchup against the Baltimore Ravens in the Harbaugh family reunion. It's John versus Jim at SoFi Stadium coming up on Monday night, but the Ravens have been giving up yards and touchdowns to just about everybody. Yeah, they didn't against Russell Wilson, but that felt more like a function of the Steelers-Ravens rivalry than anything particularly about the Ravens defense. So Justin Herbert playing some of the best football of his career and getting guys like Quentin Johnston, Ladd McConkey, Will Dissly heavily involved. I mean, look, we talked about how they lost the pass catchers, right? They lose Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Gerald Everett, and McConkey and Johnston and Dissly have stepped right in, and this passing game has been maybe more efficient than it ever has been in recent years. So Justin Herbert at this point, it's hard to make a case to have him out of your lineup, especially with, as you mentioned, 6 teams on a bye. There it is. There's Herbo.
Play him. This guy.
The Funko Pop of Jay Herbo right there. Get him in your lineup for sure. All right, back to our Week 12 games. Big one in the NFC West. The Cardinals head up to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. I will ask you both. I'll start with you, Florio. Who'd you rather this week? Let's say you're putting in either DFS lineup, Kyler Murray or Geno Smith?
Kyler Murray, no questions about it, right? I think Kyler's playing better ball than he gets credit for, especially as of late. Like the last time we saw Kyler, he was carving up the New York Jets and looking like a top fantasy quarterback in doing so. Geno Smith, I was surprised to see. He has only topped 18 fantasy points twice this season, and just 2 games with multiple passing touchdowns. So the Seahawks are throwing more than any team in the league, but it hasn't really translated to big fantasy days for Geno Smith. And like I was just saying a little while ago, the Cardinals secondary playing really well. 1 passing touchdown since week 7. From 7 to 10, 1 passing touchdown allowed.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's been outstanding. I'm going to ask you, Laquan, where would you rather go, Geno or Kyler this week?
I'm going Kyler, even though both teams are disgusting for me to even talk in a positive light about. But you don't have the turnover high upside, when you come to Kyler Murray, and he has the legs as a dual threat as well. And I actually like how he's been playing as of late, and he's been playing better ball than Geno Smith for a majority of this season. So overall, I'm looking for the guy who's not going to turn the ball over.
Sunday Night Football, Eagles at the Rams. I'm going to ask you this, Laquan, even though I know what you're going to say. Which wide receiver rather have this week? A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, or Makia Nakua and Cooper Kupp?
I'll say this. I wouldn't go the obvious route of saying my Rams, obviously, but get this both set into your starting lineups this week. I think this is going to be a great game for both of these wide receiver sets, for them to go out there, put up big points. I think a lot of points are going to be coming from these quarterbacks as well. So it's a good game to have, both of these sets of wide receivers on your rosters. But honestly, I got to go with my Rams. I think Puka Nacua puts up 2 touchdowns. I think he will be the wide receiver 1 if we had to rank out of these 4 wide receivers.
Where are you going on this one, Florio?
Which would I rather have? Most weeks, give me the Rams. I'm going to take the Eagles this week only because I'm more fearful of the Eagles secondary than I am the Rams. Like, they've been playing really, really well and shutting down some big wide receivers as of late. But I think this is a week where you want all four of them. Like, they're all going to go off. It could be a very high-scoring game like Laquan was talking about.
I mean, I do think ultimately the right answer is yes. It's just like, yeah, we want all four of those. I want some piece of all four of those guys. I would probably go with I might just go with the Rams duo simply because, look, Kyren Williams is still playing well, but the last few weeks he has not been the same guy he was earlier in the season. And I don't know if it's because defenses are trying to take him away or if it's just because the passing game is really clicking with Stafford getting the ball to Kupp and Nakua. I'm not sure really what it is more than the other. But it feels like the Rams might have to lean on the wide receivers more than the Eagles, who, Saquon is still doing Saquon things. So that's the reason I might go Nakua and Kupp. But I don't feel like there's really, truly a wrong answer either way.
These two teams, fantasy-wise, to me, are so similar. You must start quarterback, running back, two wide receivers, and that's kind of it. I know the Eagles have a tight end, too, but, like, thins out very quickly.
Absolutely. It certainly does. Monday Night Football is also at SoFi Stadium because apparently the league does not the grounds crew at SoFi to know a moment's peace. So as soon as Sunday Night Football is over, they got to switch it around and get ready for Monday Night Football. The Ravens at the Chargers. I mentioned it as the Harbaugh family reunion. Also, it's a revenge game for J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Florio, would you start either one of those guys against a Ravens run defense that's actually been really good this year?
Yeah, they've been so good that on Sunday when I was putting together the list for start sit, I had J.K. Dobbins' name as a sit, and then I was just like, 6 teams are on bye. He's been so good and getting so much work. Even in a tough matchup, I can't with confidence tell you to sit him. So I think you could start J.K. Dobbins this week because not only, like I said, getting a lot of volume, but not only that, we've seen some big runs out of him. He gets work near the goal line. Gus Edwards has not done much since returning, and he's not explosive. If you're starting him, you are hoping for a touchdown against a team that allows very few rushing touchdowns this season. So I think you start Dobbins. Gus, I'd rather drop for a streamer than start this week.
You like either of these backs this week, Laquan?
No, I'm actually fading both of these guys if I can. Only if I can. I understand there's 6 teams on bye, but this Ravens, man, this defense, when it comes to the run, they're very physical, and they've been holding down the trenches. So it's going to be a rough night for both of those guys that, again, they're very familiar with their running styles as well. So if I can pivot, I will.
All right. You can check the rest of our Week 12 previews on Fantasy Extra on NFL Plus. Now in the last 90 seconds of the show, it is time for Hot Takes presented by Frank's Red Hot. Laquan, get spicy for us, please.
Listen, I'm going to go back-to-back weeks where Anthony Richardson put up QB1 numbers. Don't jump in the train now if you gave up on him earlier in the season. I think he's back with confidence. He's gonna go out there. I do think he's going to go out there and light it up, man. I honestly think he's going off of confidence. They're playing to his strengths. We honestly know what Anthony Richardson can do with his legs. So please, I hope they play into this.
We would hope so, too. I mean, him running the football was actually great. That's what we wanted. So hopefully we see more of that coming up this week.
He won the Angry Run Award this week because of that run right there, by the way.
There you go. Couple quarterbacks getting it done at the Angry Runs. Florio, what is your hot take? This one is super spicy.
Tommy Cutlets. Not 1, not 2, 3 touchdown passes. Look, he's got 5 fingers, but it's like he only has 3. Look, the Bucs defense have allowed so much through the air. I think the Giants, we've seen like teams get a bump when they make like a coaching change or something like that. I think we could see the bump this week with a quarterback change. You know the fans are going to be lively there for Tommy DeVito, and the Bucs are going to put up plenty of points, I think. So in a catch-up mode, comeback game, Tommy DeVito 3 times. 1 to Malik Neighbors, 1 to Darius Slayton, and let's go crazy, 1 to Theo Johnson.
All right, look at Theo Johnson love in there. Making my deep sleeper feeling good about myself. We're doing a lot of this week. I've mentioned earlier that sometimes fantasy is a simple game. You find a weak spot, attack it. One of the weak spots is the Dallas Cowboys defense. That's why Brian Robinson will have a season high in fantasy points this week. His season high right now is 20. So we'll get you at least 21, maybe more, because the Cowboys can't stop a nosebleed at the moment. We saw Joe Mixon run over, around, and through them over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns last week. I think Brian Robinson does something pretty similar this week. Maybe not 3 touchdowns, but a couple of touchdowns and over 100 scrimmage yards. So B-Rob should be in your lineups. And we just keep targeting the Cowboys all season long until they show us that they can stop anybody. Those are our hot takes presented by Frank's Red Hot. In the meantime, for us, that is it. We are done. We appreciate you hanging out with the NFL Fantasy Football Show presented by Eats. You know the drill. Tell two friends to tell two friends. And remember, I used to procrastinate. Then I got so pro. Be safe, take care of yourselves, and we will talk to you tomorrow.